Jeff Bukowski, 46 and built like a fire hydrant, cursed to himself as he furiously dabbed at the coffee stain spreading across the middle of his flannel shirt, while simultaneously navigating his oversized pickup truck down a mostly desolate stretch of the Schuylkill Expressway. The coffee wasn't his fault. The damn night shift kid at the 24-hour gas station near his house in Glenside, the sort of working-class suburb that lately felt more working than class, was either perpetually stoned or stupid, most likely a combination of both. He'd overfilled Bukowski's order again, taxing the structural integrity of the disposable cup and its plastic cover, which had obviously been designed by someone equally stoned or equally stupid. Then again, Bukowski had a growing suspicion that most people he met, worked with, or was related to were incompetent. In most lines of work, that didn't matter much. A keyboard warrior at some accounting company screws up. Someone's paycheck is late. A kid at a gas station overfills a coffee cup. Maybe he ruins someone's morning. But in Bukowski's profession, construction, lack of attention had a tendency to domino. Measure a beam wrong or put a few screws out of place, 10 moves later, you got a building collapsing on the nightly news. Which was why it wasn't completely unusual for him to be spiriting his truck down the Schuylkill at 4:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. He was the head site manager, what they used to call a foreman, on Apex Development's newest project, a 26-story mixed-use office tower and retail monolith squatting near City Hall. As such, he'd enjoyed plenty of face-to-face time with the pimply teenager working the midnight to 5 at the Citgo station by the ramp to the expressway. Still, today's call had been more annoying than most. As Bukowski continued attacking the coffee stain, which was now roughly the shape of Texas and still spreading, he tossed a glance at his phone on the passenger seat. 6 automated calls, actually beginning around 2 a.m., from the worksite security panel. Not quite a misplaced beam or an errant screw, but according to the calls, at least one of the proximity alarms at the site had been going off for nearly 3 hours now. Neither of the 2 overnight security guards had called in from location or reset the password. Worse, neither of the bozos, Ted Passatori, a sliver of a kid who'd busted out of cop school 6 months ago, and Lucas Ballou, a Canadian working his way through some sort of grad school at the city college, had answered their calls when Bukowski had tried them. He'd finally given up and crawled out of bed, nearly overturning Annie, his wife, in the process. She had a habit of sleeping with one of her legs draped over the lower half of Bukowski's body, which had seemed sexy for the first 7 years of their marriage, but now felt more albatross than swan. 13 years in, she'd barely stirred as he'd gotten dressed in the dark. Bukowski hadn't been overly concerned. No doubt the 2 security guards had wandered off their posts for an unregistered break. For Teddy, it would be par for the course. The kid had been kicked out of cop school for a laundry list of minor indiscretions, and he was a frequent visitor to many of Philadelphia's after-hours bars. If the job market hadn't gotten so tight in the previous couple of years, Bukowski never would have hired him. But Teddy had come with a license to carry and a promise that he would do his best to reform. Bukowski had always been a sucker for screw-ups begging for a second chance. Lucas was more of a surprise. The guy spoke 4 languages and brought philosophy textbooks with him to his shift. But Bukowski knew how boring it could get on a worksite during those hours after midnight, when the streets went dead, save for the late-night bar hoppers, the odd and ambling flocks of homeless, and the ever-present scurry of oversized sidewalk rats. Whatever the reason for the lack of response, Bukowski had had no choice but to drag his ass down to Center City.